Caesar is an excellent character from a fantastic trilogy, and to celebrate the release of the new Planet of the Apes movie, I am going to 3D print Caesar and build a forest-inspired diorama. I am using the Frozen Mighty 8K, and this has quickly become my favorite resin 3D printer. With this 21.8 by 12.3 by 23.5 centimeter build volume and 8K resolution, it had no problem printing Caesar beautifully in one go. If you're interested in this printer, I have it linked below. I then washed it in some 95% alcohol in my Frozen Muddy wash machine. At this point, I like to remove the supports before I go ahead and cured it in my Frozen Mega Cure Station. One important thing here, this was a really big statue, so I had to scale it down to about 30% in order to print this in some sort of scale that would make sense in a diorama. I also had to add my own supports, and you can see here my settings. I like to make the connections points really small so I don't damage the model, and I basically just generated auto supports. Then I went ahead and cleaned up any of the leftover support material and got to assembling Caesar. And it seems like I'm always in a rush when I'm trying to do these YouTube videos, so I didn't have time to really go in there and clean up those mold lines. So what I did was I just basically went ahead and primed this thing, and then I had to take off for the weekend because we were going camping. While I was camping, I went on a hike and I saw this really cool hiking trail, and it inspired me for the forest section of this build, and I wanted to duplicate what I saw. So I did take a few hobby supplies with me, nothing fancy, but it goes to show you that you don't need this big YouTube studio to make cool stuff. Basically, I had a little piece of foam, and I carved this down to kind of shape out the landscape of what I wanted to build here. I traced a little path, and this is where I was going to have Caesar walking along on horseback. Now the worst thing was I didn't have a whole lot of foam taken with me, so there was only so much sculpting I could do here with the landscape. I used up a bunch of scrap pieces to try to give the land more depth. But luckily, there were some really cool rocks just outside the camper. So I grabbed a handful of rocks and I just kind of placed them in, and I figured this would be a really cool way to fill out this scene. Once that was done, I had some cheap dollar store air dry clay. All I had with me to roll it out was this bottle of hairspray, so I went ahead and flattened out some clay. Use some Mod Podge and water, and then painted the whole surface so I can make that clay stick to it. I find it's a good idea to use a little bit of glue under this clay if you want it to stick to foam and wood and stuff like that better. I pretty much covered the whole diorama in clay, and then I went ahead and painted everything in a base coat of brown and gave it a really quick light dry brush of a lighter tan color. And this is just to add a little bit of depth. Most of this is going to be covered up in flock and grass and trees and everything like that. Now for the path, I did run some glue right along the path, dropped on a few stones that I picked up outside and a little bit of this jungle flock, and sort of wanted to leave the path more worn and beaten down like I saw on my hike. Found some sticks outside, added them, a little bit more jungle flock here and there. Then I added a few tufts of grass, some brightly colored flock here that represents like a mossy growth, some shrubs, and then finally a big layer of static grass on almost everything. Then I drilled some holes and started to place all of these trees. And this is what it was looking like once it was done. So it was really cool. I was really happy with how the path turned out. And then I headed back home. Running a YouTube channel is a lot of work, but watching the subscriber count grow and chatting with everyone in the comments makes it all worthwhile. We are always making cool stuff here at Facility D20, whether that be miniatures, dioramas, or props. So go ahead and join the facility by smashing that subscribe button and help us get to 20,000 members this year. Now the first thing I did was use some light gray and highlighted all the high areas on both the Caesar and the horse. Then I mixed together some speed paints with a medium and a Windex, so it would be a little more semi-transparent, and I basically made a dark black / brown mixture here and sprayed the entire horse. Then I went in and just hit some of the shadows again with the black only. And then finally I used a little bit of leather brown to hit all the high points of the horse. Once that was done, I gave Caesar a quick dry brush of mummy robes from Army Painter, and then a watered down wash of black contrast paints. Then it was just a matter of using some speed paints, leather on all these areas here. The reins got a base coat of mummy robes before they were hit with this contrast paint. Very simple but effective. A few more details like the gun on his back was picked out with some gunmetal, and a quick dry brush of flesh on his face and fingers and toes. If you're interested in the airbrush I was using, I'll link it below. These are from Gallery. They're called the Celestial Dragon. They're super cool airbrushes. If I had my time back, I probably would have made Caesar a little bit smaller in scale, maybe 20%. But hey, at the end of the day, a diorama is supposed to be an abstract thing anyway. So I put them in place, and I was really pumped with how this thing looked. It turned out really, really great. I got to say both the miniature and the diorama base really came together, and I really nailed the look I was going for here. This is probably going to be one of my favorite dioramas. Tons of cool videos on my channel. Stick around, check them out, subscribe. I'll catch you on the next one.